Welcome, my dear friends. It's great to see you again. In case we haven't been introduced, I'm Stephen Clements, a writer, a gamer, and an appreciator of big brain activities in general. On this channel, I get to perform dramatic story readings, provide role-playing game and movie reviews, and I get to talk to interesting people. In this episode, we're continuing on with our dramatic reading of the story of an interesting person, Call Me Tennessee, by Jewish hobo Jeff Klitzner. If you haven't seen the previous episodes of this, you may want to, because there's a lot going on in this story. It gains momentum as it proceeds. And in case this catches your interest and you want a copy of this for yourself, it is available on Amazon in both Kindle and softcover format. But in case anything ever changes in one of my books, if you send me a proof of purchase or I know that you bought it, I'll send you a free PDF of the updated copy. And this has been one of my best sellers over time. So let's get back to it. In our last episode, Jeff had returned from South Korea and had made it back across the country, and he was heading home to Memphis. So we pick up with Chapter 20. Welcome back! I decided to hang out over at my mother's apartment since my friends lived within walking distance. Now Congo was set to be married, and Box was getting serious with his girlfriend at the time. Congo had decided to join the army, but before he did, he was getting married. So I tried to talk him out of it, telling him I had the door. If needed, I'd get the car started. Me and Box went to the wedding and sat in a small group at the back, being me, Little Romeo, and Box. It was by far one of the funniest weddings I'd been at because the minister looked like Kenny Rogers, so the chicken jokes came naturally. Nothing too crazy happened afterwards, other than me and Little Romeo had made some progress on the green front. He was cool enough. I would hook him up with pills, and he would share his green, and we had a blast playing Madden all night. One day I was driving home. I got hit by another car. I was driving my mother's car, so I'd have to hear that banshee wail at me, probably accusing me of getting hit on purpose, and the car was towed. I went to the hospital, and the doctor said I had a minor concussion. Nothing big, but I went to one of those get-your-money-quick lawyers. I got a minor settlement out of the deal. After that, I was just kind of sitting back one day when Congo asked me to do him a favor while he was off at boot camp. Would I mind wife-sitting a little to keep her company? I figured that was easy enough. She was always cool about hooking me up with smokes, and they had tons of video games. One day, I decided to go see a gastro doctor for my acid reflux. And an ultrasound later, they told me my kidney was extremely large, and I needed more tests done. I went back to my primary doctor, who got me a CAT scan. He revealed a tumor on my adrenal gland, which sent me to another doc. This game went on for a couple of months. Then one day I was told the tumor was the size of a softball and needed to be removed. The surgery was set, but I was freaking out. After a while, I was a regular at Romeo's pad, smoking whenever I could to take my mind off the tumor. Mountain Dew, some weed, and as many pills as I could stomach became my escape from reality. Now my mother was driving me crazy with her online research on what it was, this and that. My head was a mess. I couldn't think straight. All I knew was that the doctor doing the surgery didn't want to do it because of the location and the size. Since I was already missing my gallbladder, appendix, and some other random useless organs, I didn't care if one more left the house. I was a little more scared of dying on a table with unfinished business. But at the same time, I should have already been dead. Around this time, I also lost all of my fillings, and most of my teeth needed to be taken out. Let's just say my lifestyle had caught up to me. When the tumor got removed, I was relieved to hear that it wasn't malignant. My mother insisted I tell people it was cancer so she could get sympathy, and she might get some money out of them too. Well, it was funny. After the tumor, I never saw Romeo again. I guess we had a falling out, not sure. Hadn't given it a second thought since then. I was still feeling like crap, but at least I was alive. I had 2 cousins about to get married, one in St. Louis, the other in Oakland. I hate weddings, but I was to be a groomsman in both. So be it. I finally got all my teeth pulled, and the dentures were in just after the first wedding. Now I tried to blend in and be social, but I was so far out of reality that I didn't quite know how to deal with people at this point. I was still smoking cigarettes, and only a few people knew it. I behaved myself, for the most part. I took again to drinking a little, trying to let loose. I did what needed to be done. I recall having a good time at the wedding, even dancing with my grandmother. Upon my return home, I got my new teeth, and my grandmother was sitting at the kitchen table when I came over to say hello. She kept asking me, Why don't you go back to Israel? You were so much happier there. And I always thought you would be a good rabbi. In the middle of the week, she went to light her Shabbos candles, and this became a habit for her whenever I came over. My friend Congo found out he was going to be stationed in Louisiana, and his wife wanted me to help move and stay down there with him. I told them both I would help move and go down there, but just until he got back from training and moved in. I was planning to go back to Israel to do what my grandmother wanted me to do, because she was right. In Israel, I was happier. I had a purpose, and it felt good to be a part of something. Upon moving to this one-horse military town, I found a job at a motel doing the night audit and relief shifts because I knew the computer system they were using. My training took less than a week. I had to do about 35 minutes to and from work, but it was all highway. I kept away from boozing it up too much, just a case of beer a week or so, with the occasional getting plastered on a day off. I had to go to my cousin's wedding in Oakland. This sucked, but I was obligated to go because he was my cousin and, well, I liked the girl and all that stuff. I just really hate weddings because they all reminded me of how lonely I really was on the inside. I had to arrange for a few days off and drive to Memphis to fly out, which was no problem. I told my boss I had to do another round of chemo. I was trying to be on my best behavior and not get shit-faced, but seeing my stepmother just brought on all the not having a father issues. This patch of madness combined with my own family issues and a wedding on top just made me crack, and I just wanted to crawl into a bottle, which I did. I might have embarrassed myself and my family just a little bit. I ran my mouth a bit, even picked a fight or two while hitting on my new cousin's aunt. I acted like a total jackass, and I'm sorry about that. I just don't know how to deal with families, weddings, and relatives. All I had in life was a crappy job that let me watch HBO all night and then go back to keep my best friend's wife company in a house full of cats. I was at a low point, yet I still found a way to be the coolest cat in that town. Some of the kids who hung out around the house nearly lost their girlfriends to me, but I knew better. It really isn't hard to be the coolest guy in a town with 3 taxidermists and a Walmart. Small towns plus young girls divided by a military base equals a high STD rate, just the way it is. On this, my logic is flawless. My hatred for Muslims was still growing, but not too much since everybody in the town hated them as well. I would make a drive back once a month or so to pick up pain pills from my mother and to visit my grandmother, who once again was lighting her candles in the middle of the week. She was the inspiration for me to make my way back to Israel. I did my damnedest to save up money until Congo returned and I could fly to Israel. He finally returned. I found a ticket for $400 one way and I booked that bastard. I was going back to Israel. Wasn't sure where or how, but I was going. I called my old friend Todd and told him of my return, and he suggested his yeshiva, so I decided to make it work. For some reason, flipping the religious switch wasn't difficult for me when surrounded by similar people. For me to do this just came naturally, as it does for many people with the group mentality. Still wanting to fight the man does happen, but you don't go after the man upstairs. You stick to the man around the corner. I'm at the airport, one-way ticket in hand, and I learned they won't let me fly without a return ticket. I had to go from airline to airline to find someone to sell me a one-way return ticket for under $1,800 because that was all I had. I finally found a lady named Sylvia to help me. She was worried because I was very suspicious sounding. I explained the whole deal to her. I was going because my grandmother wanted it, and if she had ever been there, she would know why I don't want to come back. She said she had been there and understood, and got me a refundable ticket. So I got on board the plane to Israel with about $120, which meant I didn't have the money to pay for the excess baggage. So there in the airport, I had to dump 25 pounds worth of stuff I was bringing with me. Yeah, I finally made it to the gate and aboard the plane, and arrived back in the Holy Land. Chapter 21, My Triumphant Return to the Holy Land. Upon my arrival back in Israel, I got to play the "Who's your father?" question game with airport officials, but this time it was different. When they asked me in Hebrew if I spoke Hebrew, I responded in Hebrew with, "I don't speak Hebrew, but I do understand a little bit." They asked me what I was doing. I told them I was going back to yeshiva because that's what my grandmother wanted me to do, and she is very ill. The girl behind the counter called another girl, and they spoke for a second trying to find out if I was being honest with them. Then I informed them that I also came to visit my old girlfriend who was in the hospital. I gave them the details of how she got injured and where she was. They then asked me if I planned on seeking revenge, and I told them the truth. While I would love to exterminate every last one of those evil, turd-stained, camel-fucking bastards, I would much rather see God take his vengeance and allow me the peace of mind never to hear that filthy language being spoken to me ever again. They laughed at my southern drawl when I spoke of vengeance and satisfaction. This was holding up the line, and the Arab behind me started to bitch. So I turned towards him, looked him head to toe, then told him in Hebrew he needed to learn a little patience, and that he was a female bastard with crushed testicles. I then turned back to the girls behind the counter, who stamped my passport and gave me a number to call should I ever need their help or wanted to come over for a meal in their hometown. With that, me and my cowboy boots took the walk towards another guy I wanted to check my bags. But for some reason, the Arab behind me in line was causing a scene that made me laugh a little. I walked by the security dude as he mumbled something in Hebrew that I guessed was, "What did you call him?" But I just kept walking towards the door. I even threw in a little pimp limp as I passed him. I then got to the shuttles to go to Jerusalem, and while I was short on cash, I heard a shuttle driver offer me a discounted fare because he was ready to go and only needed one more rider for a full bus. I jumped on board, gave him the directions. I had no clue where this neighborhood was, and neither did he. I finally got to where I needed to be to meet with the people at the school. They were black hatters, and of course, I wore a blue baseball cap. They asked me some basic questions, and then I gave them the name of 2 rabbis from Memphis that had known me since I was a toddler. This was the last question they asked me at the time. They told me where I was staying, and then I went to my old pal Todd's house. It was small, with him, his wife, and 3 kids living in a 1-bedroom apartment, a little cramped too. He loved it, and began telling me about the head of the yeshiva. About my 3rd day there, I was suffering from the culture shock of moving from DeRidder, Louisiana to Jerusalem. Now, I only knew one way to cure the homesickness, and this is something that works for me. Yeah, it requires me listening to some Hank Williams Jr. and a bottle of cheap vodka. It was in the middle of the song, "If Heaven Ain't a Lot Like Dixie, I Don't Want to Go," that my new rabbi walked in with a jelly donut to welcome me to the school. Within about a week, the story of me dropping close to my last nickel in my clothes to hop on a plane to Israel had spread, and soon people were a little shocked at my t-shirt and jeans and baseball cap attire. I was a fish out of water. I even thought about going to another yeshiva, but I figured I would give this one a chance. I informed someone that if they could deal with the boots and belt buckles, I could deal with the black hats. I then informed them that while I understood their modesty as a reason for wearing black suits, where I am from, that's a sign of wealth, and this is what modesty looks like in America. My t-shirts are still rather legendary, and soon I realized just how little had changed since I left. I bumped into a few people who remembered me from years before, and it wasn't that they were shocked I was back, they were shocked I was still me. Some people change on the outside and then on the inside, but me, I don't believe in conforming. I believe in adapting and forcing others to change. Now look, my philosophy with the yeshiva was spot on, only my questions were a little ahead. Soon I was asked what I wanted to learn, and when I mentioned the prophets, I was kind of laughed at. Then I replied with, I know the Vilna Gaon believe that first you learn the Chumash, 5 books of Moses, then you learn the prophets, then you learn the other stuff. The Vilna Gaon was an 18th century Lithuanian scholar, and among religious Jews is considered to be one of the most influential authorities on Jewish laws. I just wanted to find out what I had missed, and in addition to that, it helps build a timeline for you to better relate to your people, and then, and only then, can you relate to yourself. It was one of those heated debates that was going to get me into some trouble because I was stubborn and I was asking to learn what they taught at seminaries where women go to learn. I eventually got someone to teach me some, and learn I did. But he couldn't answer all my questions. It's hard having people tell you that you can't jump ahead like that. It's not how one learns that your question isn't relevant, and then a week later you get the answer to your questions. I tried to explain that I'm a question and answer guy, not a read and memorize guy. I was living in a room with some younger guys, and they were fun to hang out with, going to grab pizza and Cokes. Now I was feeling like the old me, happy, not worried about much, other than a cold shower on Fridays when the hot water always seemed to run out as soon as I hopped in the shower. I was blending in well as an outsider, being accepted by most. I would always get asked to tell my story, which made me uncomfortable, so I would tailor my stories to my audience. Most importantly, I was reconnecting with my roots, which was somewhat uncomfortable, but things felt right. This is always difficult because my roots have always been scattered, much like the Jewish people. Then one Friday, my stomach decided to attack. It felt like my intestines were playing Twister and its own version of yoga. It was after the Sabbath had started, and my roommates were freaking out, not sure what to do. Finally, one of them walked to the house of a rabbi and asked him what to do. He picked up the phone and called a cab and gave them instructions to take me to the hospital. Now, I don't expect anybody to understand the level of pain I was in, but it didn't feel good. And the Russian nurses were trying to shove a tube up my nose and into my stomach and yelling at me for not being able to help them. Then comes, "You'll need surgery." "Okay, do the surgery." "You must pay first." "What?" "Do the surgery. Send me a bill or something." "No surgery until you pay." Then they stuck me in a room with this light that was flickering on and off. If you combine that with the fact I was on morphine, you get a blur of gut-wrenching pain, passing out, and a flickering light with people yelling at you about money for the surgery and how they must put in a catheter because you're not peeing enough, all in a foreign language that you're only really getting 1 out of every 3 words. It felt like I was in one of those late-night B horror movies. The only constant was the kid who came with me to the hospital, who sat with me the whole time, refusing to leave. Finally, my friend Todd came by after the Sabbath, and we tried to get medical records from the hospital in the States. That was damn near impossible, but somehow he pulled it off. After talking to some people, they got me to another hospital for the surgery. Apparently, scar tissue had formed around my small intestines. Or, in medical terms, I had a bowel obstruction caused by adhesions. The surgery was done. I remember waking up, feeling 1,000,000 times better. I was in a room with 3 people, and guess how many spoke English? After everything was done, I had visitors coming and going, people I had never met, some I had. It was nice meeting people who cared. I was up walking around in less than 2 days. They finally took out the tubes, and the young girls who brought the food around were giggling because they got to practice speaking English. I was feeling better, would go bum smokes from people on the balcony, and even do a little bit of praying and learning in the chapel. About 4 days after the surgery, I was out of the hospital with a prescription for aspirin. My friend Todd had paid for the first hospital bill, so I proposed cleaning his home on Fridays and the occasional babysitting to pay him back. Yes, I was getting to use my domestic goddess skill set once again. Soon, I found out that some of my 4th or 5th cousins through marriage had married 2 people from my school. Yeah, I have a big family that in America wouldn't give me the time of day, but in Israel, it's a different story. 5th cousins become 2nd cousins. I still knew families in town that had large meals on the Sabbath, and I would go and bring a friend or 2. I was once again confident that I was doing the right thing, and, oh yeah, I was sitting in the top classes in my free time. While I didn't understand every word, I got the drift enough to call out answers when asked. I would call my grandmother once or twice a week when babysitting for Todd, who would let me make a phone call or 2. Thanks to Vonage, I was always happy to speak with my grandmother. My grandfather couldn't hear a word I said, but my grandmother had no problem answering the phone. Every conversation was the same. She would say, "I'm glad you're happy. I'm proud of you. Whatever you do. Don't marry a damn Yankee. It was the biggest mistake I ever made." She loved my grandfather, just hated his attitude. And, of course, there was the notion back in her day that when you got married, you stayed married. I stayed in contact with my friends back home, too. One of them was going off to Iraq any day, and I was waiting for the other one to get back from Iraq. Now, I don't have many close friends, but the ones I do have are the best friends a man could ask for. And they have been there for me when I needed them, and I hope I have been there for them when needed. On occasion, I would grab a beer with a few guys to blow off steam, but since going into town or the touristy parts was kind of forbidden, we would go to the corner store and then the park, or just right there on the corner. One day, an important rabbi was passing through giving a speech, and while everyone was rushing up to him, I kind of stayed back, but the crowd forced me face to face with him. Dressed in my traditional garb of t-shirt and jeans, I got introduced. Me being from Memphis, he asked me if I knew this rabbi, and I said he prepared me for my bar mitzvah. In return, I had to cut his grass. And then he asked me if I knew another rabbi, and when I told him I've known him all my life, the head of the yeshiva looked at me funny. And then there were family questions again. I explained that I was from one of the original Jewish families in Memphis, back when they only allowed a few Jewish families in each city in the late 1800s. This got me a good handshake and put me in a class of my own there. Since people from out of town knew the same people I did, I'm not sure I can tell you I was once again the most popular cat in town. Whenever someone had a question and I answered it with the right question, the head of the yeshiva would stare at me and nod a bit. He would then ask me a question I should not have known the answer to, and I replied with the "this is what I reckon this rabbi would say" card. It then became a race to see if the rabbi actually said that or if I was bullshitting. As kids were racing through books, I was batting in the 700s. If I didn't know or was lost, I wasn't afraid to ask questions of anybody. I launched great debates with random minds and pushed others to learn harder, to prove me wrong, only to come back with a book and show me what this person said and that I was on the right track. I was getting a little arrogant, much like in university, when I would show up to a lecture without books, pens, paper, just my butt in a chair was all I needed. Then one day, I called home and found out my grandmother had pneumonia and was going to be put on a respirator to give her lungs some help. And for my mother to tell everyone else that once she goes on any machine, taking her off is murder. That was Friday night. I told the head of the yeshiva after services on Saturday that I found out she had taken a turn for the worse. I started making calls to the rabbi in Memphis, who was out of town, and then I started making plans to get back. Later that night, I found out she was on life support, and the family was going to get together to make a decision on what to do. I told a few rabbis what was going on, then I went to my apartment. I got a knock from a rabbi who said to come with him. We went to the chief rabbinic authority in Jerusalem's home and got a sit down with him. He ruled that nothing could be done but keep her on all of her medicine and all the life support. He asked me who the rabbi in Memphis was, so I told him the name of the rabbi of her congregation and the rabbi in charge of the Va'ad, kind of the local head authority. But I also informed him that he was out of town. That rabbi assured me that he would take care of it. It wasn't until afterward when I was told who that rabbi was and that I shouldn't worry so much, because it was an honor that he saw us at all. That Sunday, I booked a ticket to fly back first thing Monday morning. I also got a call from the head rabbi of my school, who asked me what was going on. I told him what I knew, and he told me to get on a flight that night. I told him I was leaving at 5 in the morning. He gave me his blessing to go back and try to keep her alive. That next day, I was flying back with a purpose. In the next episode, we'll see the outcome of that flight. So yes, Congo, me, got a lot of references in this episode. And Jeff did help out quite a bit in keeping track on the wife, because she was incredibly attention-starved, and we all got along really well. I mean, we played a ton of games together. We hung out all the time when Jeff was in Memphis. We were bros, we were sis. Now later on, Jeff told me that while I was deployed, the woman I had married, now an ex-wife, had attempted to persuade him to give her a special type of company. He says he didn't do it. I believe him. And I'm not surprised that she was like that, because she was going to get attention from some guy while I was deployed. So she probably started with him. And when he turned her down, she found someone else. It's okay. My desire for revenge has been heavily abated by the fact that, one, she ran off to Ohio, which is its own circle of hell. And then apparently she moved to D.C., where she's a lawyer. I mean, talk about self-immolation. But yeah, tumultuous time. But yeah, it was a tumultuous time in Jeff's life and mine. So hopefully it entertained you. If it did, please give a like. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel to get more of this. And share this thing around. And drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'll read them all and respond to them all. And I appreciate your time. And that's what we have for this episode, my dear, dear friends. Until next time, I wish you nothing but the best.